Birth rates are plunging and the boys out there are going bonkers trying to figure out how to get us to pop out more babies because the billionaires are going to go bankrupt if they can't get us to replenish their workforce. Want to know what I think about this population crisis that we're in? To quote one of my favorite YouTubers, Burb and Bougie, let's plunge this birth rate to hell. I'm tired of American women like myself being over capacity in the amount of humans that we are responsible for. I'm tired of women's lives being lived almost exclusively in their kitchens, laundry rooms, minivans, and the diaper aisles of Target. I'm sick of men at the top, the bottom, the middle, and everywhere in between telling women like me what we should be doing with our reproductive organs. Here's what I wish you would do with your reproductive organs. Keep them in your goddamn pants. Welcome to my channel. Let's dive into the fertility crisis.
Ready on the set? Let's try this again.
I'm Jennie Gage, and this is Life Take 2.
I'm child-free, not because I hate children, but because I don't want to live the life of a parent. I love slow mornings, deep conversations, spontaneous trips, and the freedom to explore myself in the world. Parenting, on the other hand, looks like a life of endless work, chores, exhaustion, sacrifice. No compensation, no breaks, and if you dare to take care of yourself, you're selfish. It's not mothers or children I take issue with, but what society turns motherhood into. It looks brutal. That's like becoming an astronaut just to hang a NASA badge on the wall. If you don't like the journey, why take the trip? I don't, so I won't.
Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. Thanks for stopping by. I know there's a ton of great stuff out there on YouTube, and I always appreciate when you spend a minute with me. Please subscribe so you can see more of what I do. And remember that those super chats are going into my putting braces on my 15-year-old son fund right now. So every little bit is appreciated. And thank you so much for all of your support and the amazing comments and insight that you provide to me. One of the reasons why I'm called Life Take 2 is that I have lived two very different lives. I grew up as a devout Mormon, the oldest daughter in a huge Mormon family, got married at age 20 and spent 24 years as the traditional, quintessential, stereotypical Mormon trad wifey. We would raise 5 kids of our own in the big $1 million houses and the gated enclaves, going to church every Sunday with my husband in his suit and tie and me in my fancy little picture of the Mormon dresses. I'll post a couple pics here. Then in October of 2018, my husband and I left the Mormon church together. And 2 weeks later, my 24-year nightmare of a marriage ended. And so now here I am over on the other side, living a very different life. Not a lot of people get to live two so polarizing, distinctively different phases of their life, but I have. One of the benefits of that is that I'm able to see issues from two sides of the coin. Issues like feminism, women's rights, body autonomy, marriage, family, and everything else in that spectrum. And like all of the rest of you, I'm hearing tons of news and conversations around our plummeting fertility rates. Just like you, I heard all the stuff coming out of the White House about ways that they're brainstorming to get women to have more babies. A $5,000 credit, a medal if you have 6 or more, and other incentives that, I'm sorry, do absolutely nothing for anybody anywhere. So I've spent a little bit of time coming up with my own list. Here are some things that mothers actually need for them and their children to thrive. And if we could have this complete list, I might even adopt another baby. By the way, my partners, Beth and Julia, and I, over at my Under Her Eye podcast, had a longer live discussion about this the other day that I'll link in the description, where we had some kind of interesting conversations and covered more points than I can in this video. So head over there if you'd like to know a little bit more. So this is a list of systemic resources that are absolutely missing, or in some cases just insufficient in the US, leaving mothers vulnerable to instability, poverty, burnout, and a whole bunch of other bullshit that I personally have been through myself. Before I dive into this list, I just want to touch really quickly on one little point for anybody who's new to me. When my 24-year marriage ended, not by my choice, and I escaped 2.5 decades of domestic violence, it would take me 4 days until I had no money because he cleaned out the account. It would be 10 months before I was living in my car. And I still have not financially recovered from that divorce. And I don't know if I ever will. He's living a great, happy life. I'm living a happy life where me and my children have been in constant poverty since my divorce, which is why the number one item on my list is financial protection after divorce or death of a partner. And this is something that nobody over there in the White House is going to put on a list because they're trying to take divorce off the table. They don't want us to be able to leave our partners, but this should actually be number one. If I'm buying a car, I automatically have to have insurance just in case the car crashes. And that gives kind of a funny feeling when you drive away with that new car thinking, I had to insure it just in case this beautiful new car of mine that I've worked so hard to buy crashes. But that's the reality of everything else that we get into in life. We have insurance on everything except for marriage. Why? Because men, the patriarchy, our government, our husbands, our churches do not want us to have a safety net that allows us to leave bad marriages. Marriage itself was designed to keep us trapped. And it is, and it does, and it will continue to. So when marriage ends by choice or tragedy, mothers often lose everything: housing, income, legal support, instability. Financial protections should not be optional. They should be built into the system. We need automatic unemployment or transition benefits for displaced homemakers. When my marriage ended and I went to the DES to even get food stamps and I hadn't filed for divorce yet because I couldn't even afford to, they laughed me out the door. If I lose a job, I may get a severance package and I qualify for unemployment. I lost my job of 24 years. It was being Jake's wife. And there was no unemployment. There were no protections. Put those in place. Number two, for legal aid and divorce filing for everybody. The only people who benefit from divorce at all are the attorneys. It should be free. If I'm filing for divorce, it should be free or affordable. Guaranteed right for mothers to remain in the family home for up to 3 years, giving time to stabilize. Automatic wage garnishment for child support and alimony enforcement. No attorneys necessary. That should be the default. 100% of the time, always. With criminal penalties and imprisonment for repeated noncompliance. Alimony matched to the length of the marriage. Period. Survivor support programs for women and children who lose a partner to death or abandonment. I know that there are a lot of other things that we could put in this financial protection after divorce or death of a partner category, but I felt like this covered the basics and is the bare minimum that a woman should have before she has a baby with anybody. Category number two, discounts for single mothers. Just as seniors receive discounts as a recognition of their fixed income, single mothers should receive discounts on groceries, household goods, services, and transportation. This honors the invisible labor of caregiving and offsets the financial burden of raising children on one income. I have a lot of single mothers in my life, lots of them, and their lives are incredibly hard. And when I was a single mom, it just kind of rubbed me funny when I went to a restaurant and the senior citizens in front of me who showed up in like their Lincoln Town Car or their nice Jaguar got a senior discount, and me, literally homeless, living in poverty, couldn't afford groceries. There should be a single mom day at the grocery store. There should be single mom discounts on everything. If society truly valued mothers, we would already have this in place. But the harsh truth is that society doesn't value mothers. They value the fathers. They're trying to trap the moms so the dads can be daddy. Number three, free community recreation centers for all children. Every town should offer a free public recreation center, a safe, enriching space for kids to explore, grow, and belong. These centers should include sports programs, soccer, basketball, swimming, etc., creative arts, drama, music, dance, painting, etc., after school support, weekend family programs, access for all income levels, no fees, no uniforms required. Because a thriving child is a protected child. When kids are engaged, mothers can work, rest, and breathe. One of the problems with this late-stage capitalistic stew that we're all brewing in is that we've lost a lot of our third spaces. Every aspect of our lives has been monetized. And a couple generations ago, kids had parks and we put more money into recreation programs. We now have more private club sports, expensive gyms, and dance studios, and that leaves a lot of people out. If you value children and families, Let's actually spend some of that tax money making their lives a little bit for universal health care, consistent, affordable access to care for mothers and children, including prenatal, postpartum, and pediatric health. So no family has to choose between medicine and groceries, or like I have done for so many years, just going without medical care. My son just had dental work done last year for the first time in 5 years, because it was the first time that I had insurance that could help me pay for it, and the first time I had money for the copays. Number 5, affordable housing. Access to safe long-term housing that doesn't demand more than a third of a mother's income, and policies that prevent eviction or instability during motherhood. I recently watched a program where they talked about the actual data behind the housing crisis right now, and they indicated that about 10 years ago, the average age of first-time homebuyership was, I think it was 26 years old. 5 years ago, the average age of first-time homebuyership was 32. Currently, today, the average age that a person can buy their first home is 39 years old. The rest of us are stuck in a really expensive, really trashy rental hell. They also said that the average median home price in America is currently $400,000. And I know that America is big, and so housing prices are all over the place. I'm in Gilbert, where I spent much of my life. The average home in many areas is $1.2 million plus. But let's say that 400,000 was accurate for most of America as an average. Less than 30% of Americans can afford the average home price, meaning that 70% of citizens can't buy a home at all. This has to change. Number 6, paid paternal leave, nationally guaranteed paid paternal leave for all parents. So no one is forced to go back to work days after giving birth. And this should be for mothers and fathers. Mother, obviously, for that recovery after birth, and then the father can take over after that, or perhaps they have some overlap. Number 7, childcare support, subsidized or free childcare options that are safe, reliable, and accessible. Mothers deserve support, and this should be universally applied, whether a woman is working or not working. Women who have children who do stay home and don't work also need some respite care, especially women with disabled children or children that are in any way challenged. There should be free universal childcare for working women and stay-at-home moms. Number 8, flexible work schedules, jobs that allow for remote work, flexible hours, and family-friendly policies so working mothers aren't penalized for being caregivers. Now, I didn't work for most of 24 years, although I did work for our businesses, I just didn't get paid. It's kind of a funny little thing to explain on my channel here. But when I did get my first real job after my divorce, I was working as an assistant in an elementary school classroom. It was my first real job that I'd had since I was 21 years old. So my very first day in my classroom, an hour after I had clocked in and was sitting at a table full of elementary school kids, helping them write an essay, my phone started buzzing and buzzing and buzzing in my pocket. So I finally pulled it out for a minute, and my son's school was calling an hour into my very first day on my very first job at age 44, after having not worked since age 21. My son had thrown up at school. I had no one to go get him. I had to excuse myself from the classroom, walk out, leave all of these kids with another teacher to take care of what I was supposed to do. And it was an incredible struggle as a single mom. But before you men come in and say, well, you should have been married, I had the same struggle when I was married, because it was never my husband's job to go get the kids or take care of anyone. While I was married, I had a similar thing happen one day after my ovarian tumor. When I was at the hospital for comprehensive testing, I was inside an MRI machine. My husband was at work. He just wasn't answering the phone. And the nurses told me that my phone was ringing and ringing and ringing, so they picked it up. It was that same son's elementary school. He had thrown up at school. He actually has IBS, so he throws up at school a lot. I was in an MRI machine. And as soon as I got done with that and all of my labs, I hustled over to the school where he was waiting for me in the nurse's office. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Number 9, a livable wage. I do find it interesting how many people are opposed to any type of socialism Because in America, we think that we have to just have unchecked capitalism. And that's what the millionaires and the billionaires want us to think. The reality is we need more social programs, and we do need to control our wages. And I don't have time to dive into this. Jobs should pay enough to meet basic food needs, rent, childcare, health, and transportation. None of us should be working full-time, and some of us 2, 3+ jobs and all kinds of side hustles and still struggle. And families right now are struggling more than they have in a very long time. Number 10, food security, consistent access to healthy, nourishing food. This includes robust SNAP and WIC programs and school breakfast, lunch programs. And I didn't add a ton to this one because if we bring down housing prices, if we have childcare, if women have the ability to work, and we have some of these other supports in place, then that allows us to pay a fair price to our farmers for the food again. We don't necessarily have the worst food prices in the world right now, but many of us, because of high rent, high gas, high medical bills, etc., don't have as much budget to put towards food. Number 11, mental health support, accessible, stigma-free therapy and mental health services, especially postpartum care, grief counseling, trauma recovery, etc. 12, reproductive autonomy. Give us affordable, safe access to birth control, fertility care, abortion services, and education so women can plan families on our own terms. Number 13, and I threw this one in here because I've had a vehicle for about 2 years. It has been broken down. And just last night, I was finally able to trade out of this vehicle. It has been the worst thing in my entire life. And I've had a lot of bad things going on in my life, but this is probably the worst. Number 13 is reliable transportation, affordable public transit or support for car access so mothers can get where they need to go without risking jobs or appointments, and some type of subsidies and down payment assistance for families. Number 14, community safety and protection. I had in mind all of the times I called the police for domestic violence and nothing was done when I wrote this little category here. Shelters, hotlines, legal protections, and trauma-informed law enforcement to keep women and children safe from domestic violence and coercion. And I think that in general, we need an overhaul of our entire law enforcement system in regards to domestic violence and women and children's safety. You hurt a child, you should be in jail for the rest of your life without any chance of probation. You hurt your wife, you should not just be sitting in the pew in church the next week. Number 15, free junior college for all moms. Access to tuition-free community college for all mothers, especially single or low-income moms, gives women the chance to retrain, earn a degree, or start a new career path without lifelong debt. Number 16, education and job training. Flexible, affordable programs designed specifically for mothers re-entering the workforce, offering on-site childcare, online options, and job placement support. This changed my life when I had some actual headhunters and career consultants reach out to me through my TikTok and help me figure out how to generate revenue for myself. I wasn't coming up with ideas on my own to provide for myself. I had never been trained to do so in childhood, didn't have a college degree, and had spent 24 years as a stay-at-home mom. 3 to go. Number 17, legal and workplace protections. Stronger enforcement of laws against pregnancy discrimination, protections for breastfeeding at work, and job security for caregivers. Like, there's so many unions, but there isn't a mother's union. Where's the union that says, I'm guaranteed that I can breastfeed my baby if she's downstairs in the daycare, that I can have the extra break so that I can pump at work, which for me, I was nursing every 2 hours. So had I been working, I would have had to have taken more breaks than the ordinary worker. If you value women, make sure that mothers are provided for in the workplace. Number 18, emergency financial support. When disaster strikes, job loss, illness, eviction, mothers need temporary financial aid to avoid spiraling into long-term instability. Now, after my divorce, I got my first credit card since I was a 19-year-old girl. And during the time that I was homeless, I had no resources. There was no displaced homemaker grant. There was no single mom grant that I could take advantage of. I had nowhere to turn to just keep my kids fed and make sure that we stayed alive. So I racked up that credit card when I was homeless, sleeping in the back of my car. My children were also homeless, couch surfing with friends and just bouncing around all over the place. And I would sometimes on the weekends rent motels for me and my kids to stay in together. And then I rented a VRBO for the term of a couple of months. That was 6.5 years ago. I am still paying on that credit card. It is still maxed out. I haven't made any progress in paying it off, and the interest is making it grow rather than shrink. And no, bankruptcy isn't an option for me because at some point, I hope to be able to purchase a small fixer-upper, and I need to be able to buy cars and other things. We've spoken to experts. I know whenever I talk about this, everybody always says, you should file for bankruptcy. That's not feasible. I'm between a rock and a hard place. Last but not least, number 19, time and space to rest. Mothers need time to breathe. So it would help if we had affordable support systems like home care, postpartum help, those nighttime nannies, community care networks to allow mothers to rest, recover, and reclaim their well-being. There are some other things on this list that would help with that. For instance, the child care, the free rec centers where kids can go do dance and different things like that. That would certainly help support that. But I do think that some type of a tax credit for a nighttime nanny and other things that help women to relax, regenerate, and be able to show up for our families every day would certainly help. By the way, I do want to point out that I drew all of these from tribal models. So if you have a small tribal society of between 150 and 500 people, then you have all of these things met. You have the healer, you have access to food, you have intergenerational tribal members that help take care of the kids so the mom doesn't have to just do everything all the time. You have transportation or access to things, reproductive autonomy, etc. Your tribe is the emergency financial support. Your tribe is the ones who will fund the divorce because there is no marriage in a small tribe. And it's really sad that in our current society, where we have so much tribal decay due to capitalism, industrialization, urbanization, and so many other factors, we haven't put any of these necessary support systems in place. We need to modernize and update all of the facets of tribal support that were provided to women, children, families in general, generations ago. And until that happens, no babies for you. I'll be hanging out in the comments to hear what you think of my list, and I'd love to hear from you. Are there a couple things that I might have missed? What would you add? Thanks for watching. Mwah.